Hi everybody and welcome to another edition of Race Day Preview with Gavin Faretra. I'm Dave D'Onofrio here at ConcordMonitor.com. Gavin, definitely an eventful race last week at Pocono. Crashes, action. Big thing that stands out to me is the track itself. We saw Elliott Sadler collected in the same wreck as Kurt Busch. Both of them almost made it all the way back onto the track after hitting those walls. Is that something that NASCAR needs to address here?
Yeah, I think so, and I know we talked about it before that race. We talked about it after, and obviously that's something that they've talked about a lot, and the fact that there's some really funky areas on that track. They've talked about how unsafe it is. I mean, given how fast they're coming down those back stretches and front stretches at well over, almost 220 miles an hour, it seems like. So, I mean, Elliott Sadler's was the worst. He went in at almost about 150 miles an hour, and I think back to some nasty wrecks that we've had of late in the last couple of years, and one of them was Carl Edwards when he got spun around, and obviously some people in the crowd got hurt. So luckily this time that didn't happen, but this one seemed worse because of how hard Elliott Sadler hit the wall. I mean, he hit it straight on, and it was well on the way into the infield that he hit this interior barrier, and he ended up back out on the track. Lost his engine, the tire was almost in the cockpit. I mean, this was a very scary crash, and one that, these things do happen, but one that seems like it could have been prevented if maybe they just done some different things on that, on the infield.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the track, it's a long track, which lends itself to speed. It's a different track. It's essentially a triangle more than an oval.
Right.
It's not a place that these drivers are accustomed to getting around. Yes, they go there twice a year, but it's so much different. You would think it's an obvious place for the safer barriers and for them to kind of leave the drivers some wiggle room. What also stands out to me is the car itself. I think this is the golden moment for the car of tomorrow. This is exactly what they were going for. They designed a car so that it would dissipate the energy.
Yep.
What that means is you saw the engine fall out, you saw parts fall off the front of the car, you saw the car just kind of crinkle, but you saw Elliott Sadler get out. All of that energy that sent all those parts moving went where it was supposed to go, and that was specifically not on the driver. Call it a victory for the COT.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a given that something needs to be done at Pocono, maybe some other racetracks, and it's sad that it takes stuff like this to kind of wake people up and say, oh, okay, we do need to do this, we'll throw some money at it. But like you said, an absolute golden moment, that's a perfect word for it, because, I mean, just to see him exit the car, yeah, he was in some pain, but, that's the fact that he was exiting is the important thing, and he had some chest and stomach bruising, but the fact that that was all that it was is definitely a very, very big moment for NASCAR.
We saw Sadler get out. He was a little shaken during the post inspection interview. Another guy who was shaken, but for a totally different reason, was Kurt Busch. We saw him just with no patience at all for the questions being sent to him. He made it very clear he was angry with Jimmie Johnson. Is this the feud of the second half? Is this what we have to watch? I mean, both these guys are going to be in the chase. Both these guys are going to race very important races from here to Homestead. Is this something that could brew?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we saw some rumblings of it in New Hampshire, and now this happened, and I don't know. Of course, the driver's not going to come out necessarily and just say, "Hey, yeah, I hit him on purpose. Get him out of the way. I don't like him." Of course, he's not going to say that. So I just didn't get the impression, at least because TV had gone right to Jimmie Johnson after, because there was a red flag at Costco. This was part of the Elliott Sadler thing, and he said to his crew chief, "I didn't do that on purpose. Please apologize to them. I was trying to bump draft." Okay, whether that was for NASCAR's sake or not, because they're listening too, who knows? My question is he that over-aggressive or that aggressive with the 24 or the 88 or the 5? Is he doing that with them? I mean, or was this just, I'm going to knock him out of the way. If he holds on to it, great. If not, tough luck, because I don't like you anyway.
Is there, even beyond that, is there a double standard in general for Jimmie Johnson? I mean, you have the 4-time champion,
right,
a guy with a pretty good reputation off the track.
Sure.
But is he allowed to get away with more? I mean, if this had been Brad Keselowski or Tony Stewart or somebody with a more aggressive reputation, is he now on probation, whereas Johnson gets away with really nothing?
Yeah, I think probably that has something to do with it. He's not a guy that gets himself into a lot of trouble. He's pretty quiet about things. I think maybe you give him a pass on this one. This isn't necessarily the first situation that he's been involved in, but it's certainly the most, the biggest spotlight on it because of what happened. It was late in the race. It was Kurt Busch involved, and a guy that's fighting for points himself to get into the chase. So we'll see if this rears its head again. Right now, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see what happens down the road. I
agree, and there probably is a double standard, but why not? The guy has proven himself an excellent driver.
Yep.
He's a guy who deserves the benefit of the doubt. Another guy who maybe is going to start getting some benefit of the doubt here is Greg Biffle.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy, he wins the race last week on a week that his team needs it. Jack Roush in a plane crash a few days earlier.
Yeah.
He's kind of solidifying his chase spot here. Is Biffle a guy to watch it? And how big is this for the Roush team in general?
Yeah, just hitting the Roush thing first. It was almost like this plane crash and an awful thing. He's still in the hospital, and we wish him the best. But it was almost like that kind of like wiped the slate clean.
Yeah.
All right, we're starting over. I mean, it was like the worst thing. It hasn't been a great year for them. Yeah, they got 3 guys in the chase at this point, but it really hasn't been to the Roush standard that we've seen the last couple of years. So the fact that happened, he was able to get the win. We saw Carl Edwards finish 3rd. Kenseth, he's got, what does he have for you? 4 top 5s, 8 top 10s, and he's firmly in the chase.
Yeah.
It's baffling to me. But he's also in, and he's consistent. I mean, he's always there. David Reagan, he's also on the team.
On the team?
So, but certainly a great moment for Roush, and one that I think these guys were proud to do. And Biffle said that I did it for Jack, so it's a nice moment.
Biffle, a guy, as we move on maybe to our looking now at Cedar Glen. Not Cedar Glen. That's a golf course I play at. Watkins Glen. Biffle, a guy who's decent on road courses. He'll be a factor this weekend, I think. But another guy I'm going to watch is Juan Pablo Montoya.
Mm-hmm.
Always a threat on the road courses. Has his only NASCAR victory at a road course. I'm just looking to see if this guy can finish a race. I mean, he has led in the late stages of races too often not to have a win this season. It seems like he falls out of the front, then gets a little impatient, over-aggressive, frustrated, whatever you want to call it, and that costs him. I'm going to have my eye on him this week.
I'm going to be watching 2 guys, and it's the guys that are currently 12th and 13th in the standings, Clint Boyer and Mark Martin. And the reason is because this is a huge week. With 5 weeks to go, this is a chance for Boyer to maybe create some separation with, from Mark Martin, given that there's 34 points between those 2 guys right now. And Boyer, 13.9 average finish on these tracks, where Mark Martin is typically outside the top 20. So this is a chance that anything can happen at these. These are kind of funky tracks. I'm not a huge fan of them, but this is part of the schedule. It's a race they have to do, and a chance for Boyer to maybe, like I said, create some separation and firmly get himself into the chase. And sad to say, we might not see Mark Martin in there this year.
You mentioned that these are different kinds of races. I think you have to then look back to a race a month ago at Infineon as far as who maybe might be a sleeper here.
Sure.
I'm going to go with Martin Truex. If you remember, he was having a pretty good day out there until he was blatantly wrecked by Jeff Gordon.
Yep.
I think he's going to come out this weekend and try and prove that had Gordon not got on the back of him there, he probably had a shot at the win.
Sure. And a guy I've mentioned, my sleeper is a guy I mentioned before, and Matt Kenseth, not necessarily a guy that I think is going to win this week, but 8 top 10s, 4 top 5s this year. It's baffling to me. Like I said, he's in the chase, but he is.
On to fantasy now, still holding the lead over Gavin. I'm going with Tony Stewart on my A list. He's got 5 wins there. I think it's kind of an easy pick. Marcus Ambrose, another guy who had a strong run at Infineon.
Yep. I'm
putting him and Truex on my D list, and Robbie Gordon, who's always kind of a threat, dark horse threat on the road courses, as my C list guy.
Sure. I couldn't not pick Tony Stewart. I mean, he's been the best road course guy around the last 10 years. I mean, he's been fantastic. Martin Truex and Jamie McMurray also got them on my D list, and because I've run out of AJ Allmendingers on my C list,
Who would
I've
have
used
thought
him
that?
just about every week, I'm going to roll with Paul Menard this week and see what he can do.
Winner now, I'm going with the obvious pick, as I said before. It's Tony Stewart. His average running position at this place over the last 3 years is 3.9. Think about that. His average finish is 1.4. I bet he does even better than that with a 1 this weekend.
And I'd say Juan Pablo Montoya, and for all the reasons that you gave before. I mean, he's due. 16th, 32nd in the last 2 weeks. Had a car that looked to be good enough to win both those weeks. We'll see if he can actually put it into the winner's circle this week.
Cedar Glen, Watkins Glen will be here to talk about whatever you want next week. See you then.
Take care.